Welcome to Tap Into an Expert, the podcast where we sit down with industry experts to get answers on all the questions in retail that you should be asking. Today, we're speaking with Ryan Diehl. Ryan is a digital marketing leader and media network expert with over 17 years of brand experience working at Best Buy Corporate. During his tenure at Best Buy, he oversaw affiliate marketing, the Best Buy Influencer Network, and Tech Insider Network. All successful programs which focused heavily on expert and peer-to-peer product reviews. Today, Ryan is an advisor for several startup technology and media companies to help infuse a brand perspective into their go-to market strategy. Additionally, quite a wonderful hip-hop producer, I must say. Ryan, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Eric. What an intro. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
So today what we're really focusing on is the skyrocketing returns. The damage that it does to brands, retailers, not even touching on the damage that it does to the environment with most of these returns ending up in a landfill somewhere. But we also want to talk about what are the solutions that you have seen in your career? What are the solutions that are now coming out, the technologies that are helping to reduce returns and how it could be prevented, which ultimately helps the consumer because every time things are returned, it's going to have to cost more the next time somebody buys that product. Ultimately, fixing the return problem is going to help consumers by bringing down costs across the board. So let's dive into it. More shopping obviously has shifted online. Returns are easier than ever. You could now take your returns to multiple locations, like even a Whole Foods, and just drop them off unboxed without shipping labels. It's pretty convenient to return, which is why we are seeing almost 20% of all purchases are returned today. That's about $250 billion worth of merchandise, and that's double from what it was just 5 years ago. So we want to talk about really how we got here, why everybody started doing free, where we are at now with about 30% or more of retailers starting to charge for returns. So Ryan, in your experience at Best Buy, what are the things that were driving returns initially?
So one key driver that many omnichannel retailers experienced at the peak of even the pandemic, so let's go back there, was that the revenue mix between e-commerce and brick and mortar stores dramatically shifted to online shopping. And I was at Best Buy during that time, and there was a period when the vast majority of total enterprise revenue came from online orders, largely due to the fact that our stores were open to the public in a very limited capacity. Best Buy was lucky to have been among the group of retailers who the government deemed as selling essential goods, largely due to our appliance business in that we sold important food storage products like refrigerators and freezers. Although despite being deemed an essential retailer, online shopping became our primary revenue channel, whether that's ordering products that ship to the customer's home or the customer ordered the product online and then picked up the product in store or via curbside pickup. And of course, ordering online doesn't allow a customer to touch and feel the item, nor could they talk to a Best Buy Blue Shirt, which is our version of store associates, to ask questions about the product to make sure it's right for them. So naturally, as a result of that dynamic, customer returns began to spike. So fast forward to today, the majority of total enterprise revenue shifted back to brick and mortar stores. However, that percentage of what the online channel represents of total enterprise revenue is still substantially higher than pre-pandemic levels. So therefore, returns is still an issue. And so, one common factor, regardless whether the product was ordered online or in store, is sizing. And basically, there's many instances where the customer buys a product, discovers that it's the wrong size once it's in our home. We've all been there. One example of that would be Best Buy's major appliance category, where people would order, let's say, a refrigerator, get it delivered, and then discover it wouldn't fit in the kitchen space they intended to put it in. Another easy example would be big screen TVs, right? Yeah. Often when you order a TV online, practically from any e-commerce retailer, the thumbnail looks exactly the same if it's 43 inches or 85 inches. And sometimes once you get that TV in the room you want it in, it's either too big or too small. So that sizing is another driver, I feel. Yet another high growth CE category that can contribute to driving returns is connected home. That includes smart doorbells, smart speakers, smart lighting, home security, basically any product in someone's house that's part of the Internet of Things, where they can talk to each other through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And as convenient and seemingly effortless of having a fully decked out smart home sounds, for many customers, it can be extremely complicated to set up correctly. And some of those Internet of Things products are not easily compatible with other Internet of Things products. Let's say you buy a new Blink security camera. You take that home, and then you realize that that isn't compatible with, let's say, your existing Google Home ecosystem. So that kind of feels like that isn't a good fit of a purchase, and therefore you may return it.
Mm.
One last driver is tied to the increase of online fraud. And there's, of course, many types of online fraud, but I'll give an example that's pretty close to home with my experience in affiliate marketing. So one trick that I observed is that there are fraudsters who try to take advantage of ordering a product online through an affiliate cashback site like Rakuten Shopping, where they can own post-purchase cashback. And some bad actors will intentionally return the item to the retailer after they made that purchase through Rakuten Shopping in hopes that the retailer does not report that return to Rakuten Shopping and ultimately just earn cash back on that original purchase item. So, those are, I feel, a number of real key drivers driving the skyrocketing return rate.
That's fascinating. I've never thought about the bad actors doing that in that way. Somebody always trying to trick the system.
That's right.
But the first thing that you mentioned regarding sizing, I think is also fascinating because I never thought about it in electronics. Like it's a big problem in fashion, obviously. And my daughters are very guilty of it, where they don't know what size the particular dress is going to fit them best. So they order 3 of them. 3 different sizes and the exact same dress, and they return it. And it's not with bad intentions. It's because they're not in store. But it's also very bad for the retailer. And it's interesting to hear that also happens with somebody like Best Buy with electronics. And the TV scenario makes total sense. And the Internet of Things makes total sense. Besides bracketing, there's the wardrobing issue. And again, that got its name from fashion, where people would buy a dress, wear it, and then return it with the intention of doing that ahead of time. What are some of the things that people need to think about, retailers could think about, brands could think about in the industry that help? Because one of the things that I think consumers don't understand is how much this actually hurts some of the smaller businesses. There was a manufacturer of vacuum machines, and they had a new technology, and it wasn't the exact same as everybody was used to, and they didn't educate the consumer very well. But they had a very cool design. So a lot of people bought those vacuums, and they kept on seeing the purchases, and they were so excited, and they went to go get their check, and the big box retailer turned to them and said, "Oh, you owe us X amount of dollars." And they're like, "Why? We sold, X thousands of vacuums." And I said, "Yes, but 40% of them are returned, which cost us money. So you owe us money." And that puts small businesses out of business. So what are some of the things that can be done to protect against that, besides just charging customers a 10% restocking fee or whatever it might be?
So I'll just use my experience at Best Buy to begin with. They certainly try to reduce return rates by leaning into their knowledgeable blue shirt experts to help guide and educate customers to make informed purchasing decisions. The store, of course, is the easiest way to engage with the blue shirt today. But Best Buy is also innovating in the digital space through their website and app with the ability to video live chat with a blue shirt in an actual Best Buy store virtually. And they can show you the product in real time and answer any questions you have. I think that's really cool. One other tactic, so you spoke, Eric, about restocking fees. And I would put that under the umbrella of a retailer's return policy. Best Buy's return policy today is typically 15 days. However, there's many rules with that policy in which they charge a restocking fee on select items. like drones, cameras, camcorders. And then there's other instances where the item is non-returnable. And one interesting thing that Best Buy is doing to offer a longer return window, so beyond 15 days, that I think is really, really fascinating is around Best Buy's membership program. So they extend, if you are a My Best Buy Plus member or a My Best Buy Total member, they will extend that return window to 45 days. Of course, the catch is that you need to pay an annual membership, but there's many benefits to having that membership. But I think that's an interesting dynamic where so many retailers, of course, have their own loyalty program, and being able to now toggle that return day window to encourage or in a way maybe discourage returns. I think there's an interesting play there.
Very interesting. You obviously mentioned education, which is the most important offensive strategy for reducing returns. They say an educated consumer returns 50% less. And that's actually how we got our start at the Desire Company working with you at Best Buy, was putting educational content on the product page to reduce returns. And we saw that it had a lot more benefits than just that. However, with retailers continuing to expand their categories, these new offerings that retailers now have the ability to do through third-party fulfillment centers like Best Buy. You have your blue shirts, you have your Geek Squad, you have your mark in electronics, but then you expand into luggage or travel or different categories that the floor associates, the blue shirts, might not be as educated on. So how do you tackle retailers moving into new categories, especially as fast as they're expanding, and providing the right type of education that will ultimately reduce returns?
So first off, it is super smart, I feel, for a retailer to expand into new product categories, right? And whether they fulfill that item themselves or it's shipped and fulfilled by a third-party seller through Marketplace, very common tactic for retailers. And the challenge is when going in boldly into these new product categories, and you were nailing some of them too, Eric, luggage, for instance, baby, is that the information on that online product detail page, it might be lacking. It's a category that that the merchandiser may still be educating themselves about. And also, if you think of the marketplace dynamic, this is often when the reseller is submitting information to the retailer to be populated, to have information populated on this product detail page. And the challenge with that is that some of the information on those product detail pages, especially in the early stages when the product just goes live, is that it's lacking very, very fundamental and important elements such as an incomplete product description or lacking product specs. There could also be just simply poor quality of product images. I've been on many sites where I have to zoom in because for some reason they're using a product thumbnail for the supposedly enlarged product image. And then there's a key piece that I just feel that there should not happen very often is having 0 or too few customer reviews. And in my opinion, there shouldn't be a product that goes live on an e-commerce website without some form of reviews on it, whether it be a customer review or an expert review, or quite frankly, just any type of additional objective context that can help in the customer's purchasing decisions. We've all been on a site, right? We've all been looking at a product on a website and start to think that the product looks suspect if there's no reviews on it. And personally speaking, when I see that, I immediately open another tab or browser and start searching for reviews for that product elsewhere. And if I do that, it's quite possible I might not come back to that same retailer to make that purchase because my additional research now has led me elsewhere. And elsewhere could also mean to another retailer's website.
Absolutely.
All that said, I think website merchandisers and marketers can work together and collectively agree on that same common goal to have review information on every product detail page. Merchandisers, of course, want to sell product. Marketers want to help extend the reach offsite and send traffic to that website or that product detail page. Marketers are investing all these marketing dollars across the internet to drive traffic to that product detail page, right? And really, if you think about it, all those dollars are all in vain if you don't have reviews on that page, because your ROI will suffer, your ROAS will suffer. A lot of your KPIs that you measure success will suffer. So I kind of think about that dynamic and between marketers and merchandisers, that everyone's working for the same goal, and you really need to be real planful and hopefully have a playbook together to be able to ensure that product detail page is ready to go once it goes live on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, problem is easier said than done, right? Because
Yes.
I mean, that's why you guys created and you oversaw Tech Insider Network at Best
Yes.
Buy, which was, okay, you're going to launch a product, you need at least 10 reviews. Amazon put out that you need at least 4 videos, 4 video reviews if you're going to get real traction and conversion on your product. So how do brands do that when launching a product? Because the easiest way, of course, is just go buy a bunch of fake reviews, but it works against you as well. So you said you will bounce off a product page if there are no reviews, but if there's 15,000 5-star reviews, that's the same thing as having no reviews, or worse, because then you don't even trust the company. So what are some of the solutions that people can do to do that? Are all reviews created equal, in terms of providing the right education at that point of sale, so people don't bounce off your page and start doing their own third-party independent research and come across a competitive product or the same product, to your point, on a different retailer's website, which might have more? What are some of the things that a new brand that's launching at a big box retailer needs to do to work? As you said, the marketers and the merchandisers need to work better together. Are the merchandisers as open to it as what you're saying they should be, that they're very receptive to, give me this information, let me help you get some reviews? How does a smaller brand think about doing that?
When it comes to a smaller brand, I think merchandisers often think of reviews as an afterthought, and even how it just shows up, how that product comes to life, especially in the digital experience. And there are certainly some really cool things that innovative retailers are leveraging. A couple examples would be AI, augmented reality to help with product sizing issues that we were just discussing about. But I really am a strong proponent for, simply videos, and more videos on the product detail page. And there are many ways I think that a brand of any size, and in fact, I would go as far as to say that the smaller the brand, you may have more flexibility and have more span of control to do a lot of fun testing. And that testing could be A/B testing with different videos. That could be ABCD testing, all on product detail pages to make them also very easily discoverable on that product detail page, so the shopper can find them. There are many retailers that I'll be on the page and I am searching, I am digging, looking for valuable content that can assist in my purchasing decision. And sometimes it will take, unfortunately, longer than anyone would really like to find the videos, right? So sometimes it's whoever's in charge of that product detail page user experience, where they should really even test of how to make those videos more discoverable. But even let's now imagine those videos are discoverable and they're easy to find. They can certainly come from so many different sources. One, they can come directly from the manufacturer. Some of them are fantastic. I would say that a lot of them are spec heavy, but you'd expect them to be. That's the manufacturer. They know that product in and out and have done a lot of R&D on that item. These videos could also be created by the retailer, in that they talk about the product in their own voice, perhaps do an unboxing, have an associate do an unboxing. However, while the quality is usually high when you're producing your own videos, it's very, very expensive for that retailer to produce quality videos at a high quantity. There's also peer-to-peer videos. And I would define that simply as a customer who's already purchased the product. They write an authentic review. They post pictures. And if the capability is there, they could upload a short video if they'd like. While that can drive high quantity of videos, I'd say that in my experience, and Eric, I'd love you to share if this is the same for you, but some of those videos are quite low quality. And so that's where you're kind of winning on the quantity side. Would you agree? Have you ever ran into that, Eric?
Yeah, once or twice. I would say, I mean, I have direct experience buying it's funny, I'm using a vacuum example again, but I bought a vacuum from Best Buy, and I watched the video that was provided by the manufacturer, and it was essentially a television commercial. You know, they're fun, they're
Right.
cool, they're upbeat, more lifestyle than product. And so I read a couple of reviews, all good, purchased it online, went to pick it up in store. They put it in my trunk. I drove home. I took it out the box. And for the first time, I realized it had a plug that you have to plug in. It wasn't wireless, which I thought it was. I thought this was something that you charge and you could take anywhere. But no, it's got a 20-foot plug attached to it. So put it back in the box, came back, returned it to Best Buy. So I think that what you touched on earlier too, especially with all of the online shopping, is the ability to get a real feel for the product, which could only happen if you're not touching it, if you're not feeling it in person. It could only happen through video. The quality of that video matters. I think a lot of, I mean, the way that we think about video for retail and retail pages is very much how people thought about social content 10 or 15 years ago, where people would say, well, why do I need to create content specifically for social media? I already have a television commercial. I'll just use that. Well, you can't just use that. Yes, you could edit it down to the right time or make it vertical instead of horizontal, but you're not providing the same experience that people want when they're looking at social media. So they started creating specific social media content with influencers and everything else. Now, while video is becoming increasingly important on product pages, they're saying, oh, well, I already have social content, so I'll just use the social content on the PDP. It is not the same experience. And to your point, that's when people bounce. They leave the retailer's website to start looking for helpful information. To your point also about peer-to-peer videos or UGC, you never know what you're going to get. And yes, some of it is extremely helpful, but it's a crapshoot. And you could watch a video that you're just wasting your time, or you watch a video that's excellent, but the problem is consistency and the quality and the education that's actually provided through the video. So I think that's, obviously where we as a company at the Desire Company, where we see our opportunity and where we've leaned into creating specific content for these product pages. But regardless of that, it is now known that just having video on your product page will increase sales.
My buttons. And one, do you mind if I expand a little bit on influencer videos?
Please do.
So I've been in many conversations, and many brands are having many conversations around, well, let's just leverage all social and influencer videos and just throw that on the retailer's e-commerce site. Well, while they can be extremely effective as you described, Eric, but there's some important factors for brands to consider. One is that the influencer video might have a very short shelf life in terms of what is being said in that video. I can speak to experience that video may be very effective because the theme or the campaign it was created for is for a sale event. Well, if that's called out in that video or the creator mentions the product's price, that will render that piece of content probably relevant for only a couple days, depending on the sale event or the length of time that item was at that particular price. Another vital factor I feel that brands should consider is, of course, contractual rights. So first, number one, can you put that influencer video on your website? Do you have the rights to that? What is the length of that? Is it perpetual rights? Is it 3 months? Is it a year? So on.
And if you don't mind me jumping in, it's not just the rights with the content creator or their agent. What's the music in the background? What, like that's a big
Yes.
problem. Brands can't just take a video and throw it on their website.
Hmm. I've heard from a friend, and when somebody says that, what that means. I've heard through a
Yeah.
friend that, yeah, you can get in some trouble if you have some copywritten music in the background
That's
and you're a big brand.
it happens.
And so one thing that I do want to end on this influencer caution around influencer content and repurposing that on your website is simply context. So while an influencer video might be so highly engaging off-site, the context of putting that video on site may not be right. We ran a campaign for back to school. And as you can imagine, you're targeting Gen Z. You are likely going to leverage the TikTok platform. And I was helping my team review some content that was a wonderful young student who she is in her dorm room and she is intending to talk about Sony in-ear headphones. Well, I had to watch this twice because first she was in her dorm room and she is talking about her day, which is a very, very effective, Eric, you have a daughter. There's content that you kind of look over your child's shoulder and you're like, okay, what's going on here? And it's a very compelling and useful format where it's like the day in the life. Well, this piece of content that I'm reviewing on behalf of Best Buy and a brand, the student is going on about how her day began, all of her cramming for finals, boy troubles, and then in the middle, she spends 6 seconds talking about Sony earbuds. It actually did really well off-site. It was seriously one of the best performing pieces of content for that campaign. But come on, imagine that piece of content on bestbuy.com or the app. It just doesn't necessarily fit. And that's something that I had to learn personally through time, that just because all of this content is produced offsite in the influencer space, it is not created and intended specifically and right to be on the retailer's website. Last but not least, there are third-party videos through the voice of an expert, right? They can talk in depth about the features. They can explain how the customer can get the most of the product. These can be very, very high quality videos. And if the retailer can partner with the company to scale those in an economical way, that's a very, very viable way to achieve both quantity and quality.
Which I thank you for bringing us into Best Buy to work on that. And it's been, incredibly successful because, to your point, not all videos created equal.
Right.
Video works. Again, Amazon says just put 4 videos on your website, you will increase conversions by 40%. That is wild. But to your point about the influencer talking about a day in the life, that is absolutely why she has followers on social media.
Mm-hmm.
They want to follow her no matter what she's doing. The boy trouble and going to get breakfast, and she got these new headphones. Great. All part of that. But if I am there as a consumer, me as an adult, I don't care at all about her breakfast and whatever else she saw on her way to class that day. I just want to know, are these the right headphones for me? And if so, why? How do they work? What are the results that I could expect from them? And who are they really recommended for? Because they might say right off the bat, hey, if you want to use these for professional use, this is not what you're looking for. These are perfect for when you're in the study room, but blah, 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 blah. Great. But also that how-to aspect, I think, is an important part of video that has been left out of retail for a long time. One of the wonderful things that I've enjoyed about working with Best Buy over the years is working on these how-to videos, which are now starting to populate on bestbuy.com. But it's really for post-purchase. When I get home, most of the returns do come from user error, not understanding. One of my favorite examples is it's actually a Black & Decker blender that had a bunch of 1-star reviews. And it was always, it explodes and this and that. And then we had a chef review it. And he was he just brought it up naturally. He said, look, this type of blender, it's for professional use. It has a different production that if you fill it up above halfway, it will, with hot liquid, it will explode because the pressure buildup. That is not a problem with the blender. That's science. This is made to blend things very fast, very smooth, and don't fill it up above halfway or it will explode. Well, people don't know that without seeing that video because it doesn't say that in the instruction manual necessarily. That, and even if it does, people don't read the instruction manuals anymore. So they need to rely on video to buy the right product, to know how to use it, to reduce those returns. With that said, what are some of the things that brands can think about? Should they be coming and relying on the merchandiser to provide solutions? Should they be trying to do this themselves? I mean, it's very hard for any big company to do this, let alone these startup brands.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to buy reviews, it's easy to buy some influencer content, but it's not easy to buy the right type of content or even produce it yourself. When you try to tell your own story, it's never as effective as when somebody else tells your story, because you're going to leave out the important things. You're going to talk about things that aren't as important. They're important to you as the company, but not to your consumers necessarily. So how do you juggle that? How do you deal with that as a small brand? What's the advice that you have as how they could improve the video specifically for retail and retailers?
So, of the several different types of video sources that I think a retailer can choose from, and let's just use conversion as a key measurement, it's going to be product reviews or how-to videos, because quality can be a little bit subjective, right?
Yeah.
Eric, you and your company really helped me understand the importance of how-to videos. And of course, how-to videos can certainly go on more retailer pages than just the product detail page. But I can see how a how-to video can help also reduce returns, to go back to the theme here. And, it's just how to enjoy that product to its fullest. And the customer might discover a new useful feature that they didn't know that product even had. Probably the toughest thing is navigating your own organization to find those right people who want those videos. But I promise you, they are somewhere within your company if you work for a brand. There could be email. The CRM team would love to probably bolster their trigger emails once a product is purchased. And oftentimes the first testing of what you can personalize in a trigger email would be, customers also bought this. Well, I think that that's a great component, but how nice would that be if you have this post-purchase satisfaction reinforcement that you made the right decision, and a how-to video is either embedded in that email, or you're then bounced back to wherever you need to view that video. And then you discover one or two things that you didn't even know. You realize that even if you were perhaps on the brink of maybe returning that item because you thought it only could do one thing, well, perhaps you just discovered that there's 3 other things that product could do, or how to just use it correctly, because to your point, Eric, maybe they didn't even read the instruction manual.
Nobody reads the instructions.
No one does.
All right. Well, we are now at the conclusion where we are going to put our expert in the corner and shoot some rapid fire questions at you. So, Ryan, what is a strategy everyone's following, but nobody is questioning if it is the right strategy for them or if it is actually the right thing for their KPIs?
I'm going to go with the blindly thinking AI will solve everything. This is certainly not an AI podcast, but to spare us from any rabbit holes, I do think that companies throw out AI as the solution for everything. And I've also observed that a lot of investors come pouring in without asking all the right questions, because AI is thrown out there as the end all of things. I think at the moment, AI lacks authenticity, and shoppers with a critical eye can tell if something is inauthentic. Now, that might change as AI even gets better, but I just think there just needs to be a balance. People need to chill out a little bit on that AI topic, because I think that human touch is very, very important, especially when a brand is trying to make sure that authenticity is shining through.
Yeah, I love that. What is a trend that you think will be dead by this time next year?
Ooh, that is a very strong word. I I would say right now, buy now, pay later is quite overhyped at the moment. I mean, I lost count of how many companies offer buy now, pay later. Of course, banking institutions, all banking institutions are building or buying a version of buy now, pay later. And I might be wrong, but I think that this might be the golden era of buy now, pay later for customers. But there's a strong chance that government might step in and regulate it more. And that might result in perhaps having the customer needing to pay some interest on those installment loans. And to tie it even to the returns theme, I think that as a customer, especially a young customer who might not have, a full bank account at that moment, maybe living paycheck to paycheck while they're going to school, there's no risk in using buy now, pay later. And if there are still some retailers out there who aren't charging for restocking fees, that combination might further contribute to that trend of rising returns.
And with rising returns come rising costs. So it's actually not helping anybody. I really like that answer. What's the one thing in your industry that everybody is afraid to admit?
Ooh, okay. I might get a brick thrown through my window back home. But I think that paid search, as we know it today, will change. And to use a drastic term, I think it might die at some point.
Why do you say that?
Because I think that the starting point of how people will research things on the internet will change drastically in the foreseeable future. Generative search will change the game. That's a provocative thing to say. Hopefully, I don't get too much hate mail on it.
No, I love that because I mean we've already seen YouTube eclipse Google for a starting place of search.
Right.
So and that's just the beginning of change. I really like that one as well. What's the most controversial opinion that you personally hold, industry wise?
To add on to the three controversial things I already said.
Yes. Yes.
In the future, I think that upper funnel media will become a small fraction of a brand's overall media budget due to its ineffectiveness. And I think that investment in media that directly ties to outcomes that are supporting consideration and conversion will be where a lot of the marketing dollars go.
And it's so funny because it's the exact opposite right now.
Right.
Like, the majority of everybody's spend is that upper funnel. And it's just such a crowded space these days. So if you had to bet your career on one prediction, it could be one of the ones that you just mentioned or not, what would that prediction be?
Not a huge gambler, but my bet would be that media fragmentation will continue and it will be harder to reach broad audiences. I think of Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. I do think that there's a possibility that those get regulated. And even if one of them gets regulated, that will change the game. And I think that marketers will need to be a lot more crafty and sophisticated to reach those fragmented audiences. So I would say my bet would be continued media fragmentation.
Yeah, I think it's strong, especially it's starting to happen in Europe. So it will eventually really take hold globally. Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today. I mean, in conclusion, returns are pretty much out of hand at this point, but there are a number of things that people can do to reduce them. And it really should start with the brand itself, because it is not just the retailer's responsibility. It is not how much time they give them to return or anything of that nature, because at the end of the day, the brand itself is the one who's paying the price for the returns. So they're going to pass that on to the consumer. Some of the things that you mentioned that could really help, just having proper education in the form of reviews, be that written and or video. Video not only keeps people on site longer because they're being educated, it increases conversion, and most importantly to this subject, it does start to reduce returns. Again, an educated consumer returns 50% less. So there are a lot of things that people could do. A 50% reduction in returns is about $180 billion at this point, or something pretty wild like that. So it's something worth brands looking into. I want to, again, just thank you for being here with us. You've always been a wonderful forward thinker, somebody that we've really had the pleasure of working with and guiding us along in this industry. So thank you for sharing that with a wider audience. And if you, as a listener, want to connect with Ryan, he's on LinkedIn as Ryan Michael Diehl, linkedin.com/Ryan Michael Diehl. Thank you for joining us today on Tap Into an Expert, where we tap into the experts for everything retail so you don't have to. And if you want to learn more about returns and what you could do to avoid them, visit thedesirecompany.com and click on resources. We have an infographic entitled New Data Finds that consumers are less likely to return expert recommended products. You can learn what people are doing to reduce those returns, helping ultimately keep prices down for the customers. So thank you, Ryan, very much for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me.